Sprout, go to sleep. Hello. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Let's see if a few more people join and then we will start. Hello. All right. So the last time that I checked the poll, it was 50-50 galaxy and landscape. So, hello. I think I'm going to do a landscape today and then um, I will go back on in the weekend and do a galaxy, like Friday afternoon or Saturday afternoon, one of the two. So for the landscape painting, I am going to be using my White Knights paint, and I have them in this little Holbein box that I bought. I just took all of them and put them in here, put my most used colors in here. So I think that that's what, this is what I'm going to use. I got the White Knights paint. I got a huge set. I think it was like 36 of them. I got them for Christmas, and I took the ones that I most used and I put them in this box that I purchased on eBay. And it is a Holbein box, and it comes with a little palette that you can use. And then you can just put it here on top. I hardly ever use the palette as much. I don't know why, but I sketched out, or I did a little swatch of the colors that I most use. So I am going to be using some Arches paper, there we go, to do the little landscape painting. I brought my other set of watercolors just in case Galaxy was winning out, and these are the colors that I most use for my galaxies. Hi, how are you? But since we're going to do a landscape painting, I was going to just use my White Knights because those are the ones that I use the most for landscapes. I really, really like those. Okay, so to start with, the only thing that I really do for landscapes is to do a very light horizon line. I'm going to see if I can get this straight. I hardly ever get it straight. And just lightly sketch out, or lightly pencil in a horizon line. And I honestly just kind of go with the flow. I don't know exactly what I'm going to be doing yet. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I try to be a little informative in the live streams. So thank you. I'm really glad to see that you guys are learning something. How do you get the tape not to rip up the paper? So I use painter's tape, and I just take it and I take a piece of cloth. We're just going to use my pencil case. And I do this just to pick up the lint from the cloth, and you probably won't be able to see it, but you can do it on your clothes. You can do it on your shirt, your pants. Then you just lay the paper down, and then when you pull it up, it's sticky, but it's not very sticky, and it won't rip up the paper at all. You can use it with masking tape. That's what I used to use before I got the painter's tape. So that's a little trick. And when you take it off from your paper, you rip it away from your painting. So just in case it does rip, you won't rip into your painting. So it has happened. Sometimes, sometimes I get a little aggressive when I am taking up my paper. So it will rip it a little, but if you rip it away from your painting, it won't rip into the painting. So there's another little tip. All right. So, and I learned that tip on, I think it was on YouTube. I learned it from someone. So the first thing I'm going to do is wet my entire paper. You can have sound. Can anyone else hear me, or is it just Ava who can't hear me? So I just thoroughly saturate my paper. And I'm going to be doing just a little landscape painting with some mountains, skies, and some water. And to start with, I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine and just dot some along the top for the clouds, just very loosely. Nothing too fancy. Then I take a little bit of indigo. Sorry, I got purple. What did I say about the tape? I don't think she can still hear me. So I take a little bit of indigo, and then I also put it down just to make a little bit of an illusion of some darker clouds at the bottom. I try to leave some white spots because the sky is not always just blue and dark blue, and leaving the white spots gives a little bit of the illusion of having a nice cloudy sky. So just dry your brush off and pull some of that paint up. I'm going to go in a little bit darker with some ultramarine to darken up a few of those bases. Thank you, Libo. Yeah, that's what I do so that it's not so sticky. You just wanna. They have low stack or low sticky tape. I've never tried that, but I heard that works as well. But you know, if I don't know how expensive that is, but if you try that technique, most times, like 9 out of 10 times, it won't stick to your paper. And just go slow. So I'm just putting a little bit of definition into the sky. And if you've seen some of my lives in the past couple of weeks, you'll know that I usually, with these type of paintings, I usually don't go in with a plan. I just kind of paint as I go. Welcome back, that one furry. And now I'm going to put a little tiny bit of Payne's Gray. To make it look just a little bit stormy at the bottom. Just a couple of stormy little clouds here and there. And Arches paper, what I use, stays wet a really long time. So it's really good for galaxies and for landscapes. It's really good for times where you want your paints to blend in together. And I get them, Arches paper can be quite expensive, but I always get my paper at Hobby Lobby, and I use my 40% off coupon. So if you have the app, you get 40% off of one item every single week. And I usually pick up one pad of paper every time that I go there, and I use my 40% off coupon, and it turns out to be around $11 or $12. So that's pretty good. All right, so there is the sky. And now we are going to make the water. So I'm thinking, let's make the water a little indigo-ish. So depending on how dark I make the water, I may touch up the sky a little bit more. Not always, but sometimes. So I start off with the darkest at the bottom, and then I work my way up to the lightest. Sorry about that, my window is open. All right. Hi, Micah. So there are times where I want a little path of sunlight to come through. And if that's the case, you just take a little bit of tissue and you block out the sunlight, or where you think the sun is going to be. So I'm going to say that the sun is right here in the center. And I am going to block off a little bit of that sunlight through the water. And then I don't like it to be so harsh, so I blend a little in. I don't like to have really harsh white lines on my paper. Your neighbor's blasting music. All right. So let's get a little bit of this paint up from here. And you can probably still see my line here, and that's okay because we're going to be doing a mountain scene. So I'm going to cover a bit of that up. Okay. And the paper is still really, really wet. So while the paper is wet, I like to put in some shadows for the water before drying anything out. Okay, and I'm gonna go back to the indigo and darken it up in some places. So I'm using a quill brush, and I found that I used to use just a regular round brush for my water and for my skies, but the quill brush has a really nice point. Let me see if you can see it here. There we go. It has a really nice point to it. So any of the lines or textures that I put in, I can actually get some really nice defined lines with a quill brush. So hello to everyone who has just joined. Thank you. Thank you for joining me. So I'm just going to go in and darken a couple of areas. The areas that are closest to me at the bottom are the ones that are going to be the darkest because they're the furthest away from the sun. And I need to dry my brush a little because my brush is too wet. And all of this I've really learned from trial and error. I have a lot of pieces where it didn't look great, but I learned through trial and error. Just kind of brush along the bottom. I need to turn my paper a little. Brush along the bottom, and I can brush into the white spots. And the paper is very wet, so the paint is going to spread. And I'm just going to keep going up. I'm going to wet my paintbrush a bit, get a bit of that paint off of it, because I don't want it to be too dark up by the sky. And pull it up on this side too. And if you can see, we're keeping that area where the sunlight is hitting, we're keeping that pretty light. I do add color to it, but I try not to add too much color because you want some of the light areas to come through. Okay. And you want to blend these dark pieces in. And at this point, I can see that my consider therapy, it is for me. I really enjoy it. I can see that my water is going to be dark because of the colors that I used. I used indigo. So I'm going to go back up and darken my sky a bit so that it doesn't look off balance. So if you can see up here, parts of the water have blended into the sky. And that's okay. That's not a huge problem because, as I said, the paper is still really wet. And I only wet it that one time in the very beginning. It's still really wet. So I'm going to add a little bit of my indigo color to spots in the sky, just to darken it up a bit. And I'm also going to darken up the edges of the sky where the sun isn't hitting. Thank you, thank you. This is just like laying the groundwork for it. And I'm going to lift up some of the paints because I don't want the sky to be too dark and I still want some light places in the sky. So I'm just cleaning my brush off in between and lifting up some of that paint. And we're gonna add a little bit more ultramarine since a lot of it got lost when I added the indigo. And we're gonna soften the edges here around where the sun is supposed to be shining. There we go. So let's add a little bit more ultramarine in places to give the illusion of like the blue sky in between the clouds. If any of you have any questions, feel free to ask them. For those that just joined us, I'm using White Night paints and Arches watercolor paper. Right. I don't really like to have a lot of harsh lines around the sun either. Since I don't add any other color except the blue, I don't add any yellows or anything to it. I just want to give it the illusion of like a light shining through there. All right, so now we're gonna go back to, I darkened up the sky a bit, so we're gonna go back down into the water and I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine to my indigo, which is what I'm doing off camera here. So here, let me just show you. I'm adding a little bit of ultramarine to my indigo wash that I have here, just to make it a little bluer. Okay. Then we're gonna go in. Oh, it looks like it's too light. So at this point, what I'm doing is darkening up the waters. So we're gonna go in. And you want to do this very loosely. Gotta turn my paper again. You want to do this loosely and just kind of let your hand wiggle around. And I don't load my brush up with any more paint at this point because you want it to get lighter as it goes up. And then use a very tip, just put a couple of little loose lines. And when it dries, it's going to dry evenly. Now I'm going to clean my brush off a little, not too much because you just want the colors to start blending in now. And you want a little bit of the light to come through, especially on top. And blend that in. And I'm picking up paint from the bottom and moving it up to the top. And when I get closer to the top, I'm just going to clean my brush off again. And the paper is still fairly wet, so that helps disperse the color a little. And I'm gonna wet my brush to wash a lot of that color off, because again, it gets lighter on top, up near the skyline. And we'll add a couple of lines of the water into that really light piece, the really light that's being cast by the sun on the water. All right. And we're gonna let that dry for just a little bit. I usually, when I'm doing my landscape paintings, I usually don't use my hair dryer to dry it like I do with the galaxies, because I don't know why. I just don't. I like to let it dry naturally. And then we're gonna take it to show here the skyline. All right. So you see here that the sun is here and it's shining on the water. And when this dries a little bit more, we're going to go in with some really dark indigo to cast a bit more shadows at the bottom there. All right, let's see how wet this is. All right, that's still pretty wet. So we're going to leave that alone for a bit while I mess around with the sky a little bit more. Oh wait, I see a piece here that I don't like, so I'm going to soften that out. There we go. So it looks like a little shadow underneath. All right, so let's work a little bit on the sky, and then when this dries a little bit more, then we'll go ahead and add some mountains to the bottom. Hi, Kim. How are you? So we're going to add a little bit more of ultramarine because I really want some more of the sky peeking out. Oh, that came in heavy. That's okay. We're just going to blend those edges in, because as I said, this paper is still fairly wet. I like to, at this point, this is going to be a little bit strange, but I like to hold my piece upside down so that the clouds kind of run into the top and not the bottom. Soften those edges. And go in here. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. All right, so we are laying a little bit of the blue down. And I like to add a little tiny bit of Payne's Gray. Just throw it down wherever you want. Like I said, there's no rhyme or reason for anything that I do. Sometimes I just paint. So we're throwing down a little bit of the Payne's Gray to show maybe it's like a storm that's coming in, but it's still light out. I'm using Arches watercolor paper, 140 pounds. Here, I'll show you. There we go. And as I said earlier, I get it at Hobby Lobby, and I get it when I have my coupons. If you download the Hobby Lobby app, you get a 40% coupon every week. So Arches paper is really expensive, so I get it fairly cheap, around $11 a pad. And it comes with 12 sheets of paper. And I hardly ever use the sheets of paper, the entire sheet of paper, especially when I'm doing like my landscapes and things. What I like to do is cut my paper into fours. And so these are, I just cut it into 4 equal parts. And then I do my paintings on them. So they last a really long time. 12 sheets might not seem like a lot, but it really does. It lasts for a while if you cut it. I haven't really mastered the whole painting on big pieces of paper part. So I just like to use the smaller ones, and I cut it into fours. All right, so we're gonna add a little bit more gray here. Once Upon a Fangirl, hello, how are you? All right, so we're having a little bit of a storm coming in from this side. That's what we're gonna go with. Just add a little bit more Payne's Gray, and I don't want it to be very harsh, so I'm going to lighten that up a bit. Hey, that one furry, what's your name? You're always in my lives and we're always chatting, but I don't know your name. All right. Thank you, Sugar Cube. Let's add a little bit of more Payne's Gray to show a little bit of the storm coming in. And we'll add some over here. All right. Elizabeth. All right. I will call you Elizabeth. It's nice meeting you. All right. I was waiting for this to dry, and then I went ahead and I wet it again. That's okay. All right. So we're gonna leave the water as is for now. I work on it a little bit more at the end. And we have our sky here. And if you noticed, I added a little bit of color to the sky in the very beginning. Hi, Quirky Splash, how are you? I added just a tad bit of color to the sky in the beginning, but I usually don't know what I want to do completely with the sky until I've worked on the water, because I sometimes make the water dark, I sometimes make the water light, and I wanted to have a little bit of symmetry. So since I made the water darker this time, I'm going to go ahead. That's why I went ahead and added some darkness to the top here. And let me add a little bit more. And sometimes I add just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of blue so it could look like a nice clear sky. So I just kind of go with the flow. With the flow of my painting. All right, there we go. All right, so let's add some mountains. And what I do with the mountains is I just do a very light wash of the Payne's Gray. So we have a little light wash. Hi to everyone who has just joined. Hello, hello. I do a light wash. Let me just test it out up here. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and then just do a little bit of the mountains. This is still a little bit wet, but Okay. So to begin with, what I like to do is just, in the beginning, we added the pencil marking of the skyline so that I knew where my sky ended and my water began. It's a little crooked. I knew it would be. It's always crooked. All right, let's see. And then we are going to just very lightly put a little bit of the Payne's Gray along the skyline. And where the sun is, it's too dark, so we're gonna lighten that up a bit by very gently tapping your paper towel against it. And then this is the fun part. I always love this part. We're still using the same light color, and we're just adding in a few mountains, and my brush is too wet. So we're adding in a few mountains. They can be big, they can be little, however you want. Let's add a little bit right there. And then at the end, when we're done with this, we're gonna go in and darken a few of them. Whoops. You want to leave the ones in the middle pretty light because that's where the sun is hitting it. So now I'm going to go back in and add a little bit more of the Payne's Gray just to make it a bit darker. Okay. Thank you, Kim. Thank you. And then I'm just dropping a little bit of color in there. I'm not doing anything else but just dropping that color in. And again, my paintbrush is too wet, so I am just drop, drop, drop. And as we get closer to the middle, you want to leave that light, so you really only want to drop color into the ones furthest away from the sun. So we're dropping in that color. And as long as your paper is fairly dry, it'll stay in the middle there. All right. So that's going to lighten up on its own. And when it does, then we can add a little color if we need to, or leave it as is. You know, at that point, it's just completely up to you. Now, I see up here that I have some hard lines, and I know a lot of people like hard lines on their paper, but I don't like them at all. So I'm just gonna smudge those out. Smudge out. And you probably can't even see them. I think it's just me who can see them because I'm really close to the paper. Oh no, look what I did. All right, so if that happens, then all you have to do is take a little bit of your paper towel and dry that off. Ta-da! And you're good to go again. Not quite, it's still bleeding a little. You want to get as close to the mountain or to wherever you put water as possible so that spot is dry so that it doesn't run into it. All right. And I'm just blending out these edges here. Okay. All right. So, oh, my computer is, okay. All right, so now what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna add a little bit of color to the water. Hi, the watercolor pad, how are you? I'm just going to add a little bit, and see, the sky is still bugging me a little because I have a lot of dark patches up here. Okay, so I'm just gonna add just a little bit more color to the water, and in order to do that, I'm just gonna add a little bit more of my indigo to my mixture here. Make it a little darker, and let's see. Oh, that's too dark. So we're gonna add a little bit of water. I am using Arches. And right now, what time is it? I have no idea. It's like nap time, I know that. For my kid, it's 4:12. It's nap time, and this is what she's doing. She's supposed to be sleeping, but she's on her bed, playing around. All right. So I got a little bit more indigo, and I'm just going to just add a little bit of texture to the water. I was supposed to do a water tutorial on the lettering nook, but unfortunately I had a death in the family, so I wasn't able to do that. So if you guys want to, yes, in the day. So if you guys want to see a more in-depth tutorial, stay tuned, because I am going to be rescheduling that with Kim, and you'll see in detail how I do the water. So I'm not going to give you too much information now because I don't want to give any secrets away. So I'm just adding some in the dark here, some of the dark colors. I know, I can't wait either. I'm looking forward to it. All right. Does anyone have any questions while I'm wrapping this up? And then, let's see. Oh no, what happened? I saw that there was the announcement for it on the stories, and then I was waiting up for it, but I couldn't see it. Quirky Splash, this is a Raphael quill brush. And there was a promotion on Blick. I actually think that the promotion is still going on. If you buy, I think 3 or 4 Sennelier paints, then you get this free quill brush. And it's the first time I've ever used a quill brush, and I love it. I've never used one before, but ever since I got this, it's literally like the only brush I've been using. So I made a mistake here and I added water here. So I'm just trying to fix that up. All right, so the bottom is going to stay dark and we're gonna lighten it up as we go up. So what I did was I just washed my brush off a little to lighten up the paint. Are you gonna reschedule that one, Kim? This brush is very versatile because it's thick and, you know, it makes nice thick washes, but it also has a very fine point, and I really like it. I never thought that I would work with anything other than my Princeton brushes, but I have found that I really like this brush. And let's go back over here. And we're just gonna do the same over here and lighten it up as we go up. And then I just like to pick up a bit of color from the bottom and run that into the path of the sun. All right, so now we're gonna go back up to the mountains. Oh, wait, let me fix this here. So actually, let me add a couple of dark touches around here. I fiddle a lot with my piece at the very end. Sometimes I'm not really happy with the way it looks, so I fiddle and fiddle until I get there. But you also kind of have to know when to stop and when to stop messing with it, because you don't want to mess up your piece. And I think that's one of the hardest things that I've had to learn is know when to stop. And it's not always very easy. Okay. So since the clouds are coming in from this side, I wanted to make this side just a little tiny bit darker than that side. All right, so now that that's done, I'm just gonna go in and darken the mountains a little bit more at the edges. And again, this paper is still very wet, so the mountains are still wet. And you can see here that it's running into the bottom, and that's okay. It just gives a little shadow to the water. So we're dropping in some dark colors here, and we're gonna leave the light colors in the middle. Oh, Kim, yeah, I asked if it's going to be rescheduled. And just dropping in that color. And then we're gonna blend that in so that there's not a really hard edge. Okay. All right, I think. Well, I have my notifications on then. I'll catch it if it's impromptu. All right, we're just gonna add. I decided I wanted to darken up the bottom just a little bit more. So I'm just gonna add a couple of dots of color to the bottom here. And I'm just going in with straight indigo. Whoa. I'm up for it if you are. All right. I go back to work tomorrow, Kim. So yeah, I'm up for it. If you wanna do it tonight or in the evenings during the week, that's fine with me. All right, and I'm just adding a little bit of really dark color, a really dark indigo to the bottom. All right, so there's that. And now, let's see how wet that is. We'll start taking off the tape at the top. And as I said earlier, in order for you to try not to rip the paper as much as possible, you want to take it slow and you want to pull away from your painting. There we go. And I take this tape and I reuse it all the time until it gets just dirty. And if you're wondering what this board is, when I get done with my pads of paper, there is a board on the back of it. I don't know if you can see that. And I just recycle that and use it for my my things. And basically any paper that you have usually has that. All right, Kimmy, I'll shoot you a DM I'm actually, you know, free basically all day. And we're going to take that off. Let's stick it on the table over there since I'm going to reuse that later. And then and here we go. All right. And there you go. A nice little landscape painting. Let me put that up here. And for those of you who joined in a little late, I used my set of White Knight paints. There they are. I love these things and they're fairly cheap. And I just put them in a little Holbein case that I bought on eBay. And here, I'm trying to be all stylized here. Here is my size 0 Raphael quill brush. Thank you. Like I said, if you guys want to see like a more in-depth look on how I do the water, I know I did it really quickly here, and I did that on purpose. I didn't talk too much about it because I'm going to be doing a tutorial over at the Lettering Nook. And Kim is going to be there with me. So Kim from Love Lettered. So give her a follow and give the Lettering Nook a follow. Kim, these are White Knight paints. And they came in a really big palette. The palette is huge. It's a set of 36 paints. And I don't use all of them. So I took the ones that I use the most and I put them in this little Holbein case that I got on eBay. So, yep, White Knights. They're Russian, the Russian brand. I love them. They're so pigmented and they have beautiful colors. And they come in pans and tubes, but I bought the pans. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. I try to, you know, be a little bit, give you guys a little bit of like a tutorial. So if you guys ever want to see me paint anything, any of my paintings that I can do, like don't ask me to paint florals because that won't be happening. But if you have anything that you want me to paint, anything that you've seen in my feed, feel free to send me a DM. I usually can go live on Fridays, Saturdays, or Sundays. Today was an exception because I was off of work today. So Friday, Saturday, or Sundays between like 2 and 5 when my baby takes a nap. So if you have anything that you want to see, just send me a DM and I will be very happy to show it to you. And this painting and nearly every painting that I have on my feed is on my Etsy shop if you want to buy it. And I have a bunch of cute little brush rests there as well. So if you guys don't have any questions, I will sign off for now. And I will talk to you guys later. And if you want to see the water again tutorial more in depth, then give the Lettering Nook a follow because it'll be posted over there when that's going to happen. Thanks, guys. Bye.